including pockets here in Louisville, connectivity is unreliable or unavailable. So today, we're going to learn about a project that is nearing completion, that is perhaps the most significant step ever taken to bring internet access to all Kentuckians to essentially close the digital divide. Rob Morphonius will be one of our speakers. He is the CEO of KentuckyWired, a state-run project that involves extending 3,200 miles of high-speed fiber optic cable into every Kentucky county. Rob has a BS in building science from Auburn University and an MBA from the University of Louisville. He has a long and established career in infrastructure management, and prior to taking on the KentuckyWired project, Rob was CEO and project director for the consortium of companies that constructed the East End Crossing, the bridge connecting East End of Jefferson County with Indiana. Dave Flessis will also speak today. Dave is the CEO of a new company called Accelecom. Accelecom, as he'll explain, is sort of the company that is going to be the result of KentuckyWired. And Dave is about 35 years, actually, of telecom experience at a broad range of disciplines, including senior operational roles at Sprint and Time Warner Cable. He has a BS from the University of Wisconsin and an MBA from Marquette University. So we will begin with Rob, and then a little bit later, Rob will turn the presentation over to Dave. So what I will do, Rob, as you gear up, I will get get our visuals online. Okay. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here with you today, and appreciate the Rotary's work in the community. As Dan addressed, we're here to present KentuckyWired, what it is, what it does for the Commonwealth, and to Dan's comments, what we are trying to accomplish with this project in a way that's never been done before across a full state, is to bridge that digital divide. And that digital divide being basically the gap between those that do have high-speed broadband internet and those who do not. Some people, when that is said, picture that just being rural areas, which certainly is an area to be addressed and of concern. But there are other areas, even within urban areas of Louisville, Lexington, that still have spotty or no internet access. So we're here today to kind of tell you the story of how KentuckyWired bridges that digital divide. So unreliable internet is a real problem, not only in Kentucky, but in many states. But as everybody knows, Kentucky is fairly low ranked in a number of categories. And one of them is high-speed internet. We are 45th in percentage of population with access to internet and 47th in percentage of population with internet subscriptions. That shows that there's a lot of people being left out. Without reliable internet, we are limited in how to do economic development and address poverty in across the state. Without it, it gives us very limited healthcare access and limited employment opportunities, especially with everyone being asked to work from home these days. And then barriers of social isolation. We cannot break down those barriers without giving everyone access to high-speed, reliable internet. So, as everyone knows, we're still in the throngs of a pandemic, and never before has the importance of high-speed internet been highlighted as much as during this time period during the pandemic. You'll see the stat up there on the screen that 650,000 public school students overnight were asked to go home and learn from home. And that was a big ship to turn quickly. And, you know,
in terms of KentuckyWired project, trying to get internet service to everybody in Kentucky.
So, and then teachers themselves were asked to teach for home. Businesses had to work remotely, and there was basically unprecedented demands on telehealth care, where people couldn't get in to see their healthcare doctors, nurses personally, but telehealth became a real need. So KentuckyWired, a little bit of the history. This was a idea put forth initially to assist with rural areas of Kentucky, but the officials of the Commonwealth had the foresight to take it from just that to a initiative to help the whole state and every county across the state, and to be one of the first to bring high-speed internet to every county across the Commonwealth. With support from Hal Rogers and the Center of Rural Development that were involved initially, along with Governor Steve Beshear in 2014, the project was realized, and there's and it took the help of both sides of the aisle to get this project up and running. Today, we're finishing up construction of a 3,200-mile high-speed fiber optic cable that will be owned by the Commonwealth. No other state has this. The map that you see in front of you is a depiction of how we route this, what we call the middle mile high-speed internet network. It basically consists of 6 rings across the Commonwealth. That's the red lines that you see. The blue lines are the segments and the laterals that come off of that to be able to reach to every county. The next slide is a picture of a typical line crew hanging our fiber on existing poles or new poles that we put in place. We've figured out that the fastest way to get this done is to use poles owned by existing utilities that other utilities hang upon, and we just get added to that hierarchy of utilities on these poles. And where there are none, we put in our own. We also run underground where it's feasible. That's another way we get this fiber optic in place. And of course, this gentleman seems to be almost in a jungle, but as you might imagine, the geography of the Commonwealth is different from one region to another. So in some areas, we have to go through very mountainous areas, very dense areas, other areas very urban. We try to make use of existing right-of-ways, either owned by the Department of Transportation or others, but there is areas where we have to go through private properties as well. So this makes for a very contract-heavy project. Here's some of the stats. What we're putting in place is basically a 288 strand bundle of fiber optic cable. Of that 288 strands, 144 of them are dedicated to the state agencies, the Commonwealth agencies. These are like the Highway Patrol, the major universities, the community college, Department of Children and Family, and on and on. We have already started to migrate many of those agencies onto the network. The remaining capacity, the other 144 strands, is set aside for commercial and residential use by local ISPs that want to use the capacity that we have built, which is open access to any ISP that wants to get on the network. So that's how we have constructed it, so that we take care of both the Commonwealth and their needs as a state, and then also leave capacity for commercial, residential, private entities. With that, I'll kick it over to David Flessis, who heads up our wholesaler company, and he'll tell you a little bit about how those local ISPs connect to our network.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Rotarians, for having us today. We're excited to share the story with you. As Rob said, the construction of the 3,200 miles of fiber is essentially complete, and now the work of connecting county governments, schools, businesses, and internet service providers across the state begins. I mean, it's a huge advantage to have the fiber network in every county, and we'll walk you through how that's going to work. The first question, and the question we get often, is, what is the middle mile, and what about the last mile, and so what about the middle mile, and then what comes next? So there's a couple of analogies that we like to use, and I think they're both pretty applicable. The last mile is certainly critical, but the middle mile is the interstate highway system, if you will. So if you think about building the interstate highway system in the 50s and 60s, Rob has completed that construction of the interstate system, which is the middle mile. Now the construction of the off-ramps to individual communities starts. So that is actually a pretty good visual, if you will, about what has happened here. We've got the interstate system complete, or the intrastate system, if you will, and the off-ramp construction is underway. Again, we've got connectivity to every county in the Commonwealth. They've all got access to the same next generation state-of-the-art high-speed network. As Dan said, I've got 35 years in telecom. Most of that time has been spent, unfortunately, with migrating historical systems, legacy or obsolete technologies. The fun part about this job is there is no legacy and there is no obsolete. This is all state-of-the-art, next-gen, homogeneous network, which is going to be really a game changer when people start to get access to it. So it's going to take time. It's going to take creativity and involvement with local governments. It will take money, as these things always do. But the good news is that there is a fair amount of creativity engaged already. I'm sure you followed the news that the federal government is very interested in bridging this gap and has got a lot of grant money available for local government and local ISPs. And I think it is safe to say that this is, in fact, the beginning of the end of the digital divide. The second analogy, which I think makes sense and applies, is rural electrification. You think back to that project in the 30s, it really was a couple of decades before the original and initial investments in rural electrification began to pay dividends. I think that the broadband project, the Kentucky Wired network, is going to have an even bigger impact on the Commonwealth than rural electrification did. And I also think that the transition won't take a couple of decades. It will certainly take some years to get access to everybody, but you can see, and the COVID actually has been an accelerator for this. The demand and the need for broadband access has become very obvious, and the dynamic to implement those changes is really ramping up. So I think we all certainly see, as we're talking over a 87-person Zoom call, that broadband access is going to be vital for everyone. It's you know, a utility in that everybody needs access to it, whether it's a water project or an electrical project or a broadband. It's going to be part of what is required to be successful going forward. So Accelecom, as Rob mentioned, is the wholesale partner to the state. Every county will have access to the network. The state is providing service to state agencies, and Accelecom is providing wholesale services to non-state agencies. So that is county governments, businesses, wireless service providers, and importantly, internet service providers. So those internet service providers who are providing that, or who are in the process of building those off-ramps to the interstate system that we talked about previously, Accelecom will be working with those ISPs to make sure those off-ramps are built as frequently and as deeply into the populace as is needed. And it's really all sectors in all areas. You know, if there is a local ISP serving a local area, we are gonna have the ability to provide them faster access and extending their reach to areas where they don't serve currently. If there are areas, and there's a fair number of them, where there is no local ISP, we provide that connectivity, that pipe that will allow local ISPs to exist where they haven't existed before. I think one technology that will get a fair amount of play, and you may have been keeping up with the news on this, is fixed wireless. There's been some recent spectrum auctions that the federal government has overseen. A lot of new spectrum that allows a wireless connection to areas that were not able to be served with a wire line connection previously, and we will be facilitating those wireless ISPs to provide service and connectivity where they haven't been able to do that before. For industry and the health industry, the agricultural industry, and as I said, county governments, the connection that they get through the KentuckyWired network will be better, faster, more reliable than what they have seen previously. So all of that is to say, we are really excited to be providing what is a state-of-the-art ubiquitous service to areas both who've had some service before where it will get better, and importantly, areas that haven't had service before that will have great service for the first time. We talked a little bit about our target markets. Again, we're very excited. The map that Rob showed you previously, in most instances, that fiber runs through you know, the center of the county government, in many cases right through the county courthouse. That makes it easy, as you can imagine, to connect up those county governments and to extend from that area into other areas in the county that need that service. So the design of the network has made it easy to extend that network. And as I said, there's just unlimited opportunity to make things better and make a difference in healthcare, education, agriculture, not to mention just industry. Rob said about 140 state agency locations have already migrated to the network. The results and the feedback that we're getting from those folks who are already on the new network is uniformly very positive. And you know how it happens yourself when you can get away from the spinning blue wheel of death and get to a super fast connection. It's, you know, it's a game changer, in many instances, a life changer. So we're very optimistic that when we begin connecting to these various communities, it's going to be a very important change. And we haven't spoken to this point, it's our Accelecom success is in fact the Commonwealth success. The nature of our agreement as the wholesaler to the state is that of a revenue sharing agreement. So a portion of our revenue goes to the state to help pay for construction costs. As Rob said, the Commonwealth owns the fiber. We're managing and have access to 50% of that fiber. But as we add customers and revenue over time, a fairly significant part of that revenue goes back to the state coffers. So the network belongs to the state and it will serve the state, and the revenue will benefit the state. So it's quite unique. It's state-run network for all. And as I said, the topography and technology and the homogeneity of the network in terms of providing this great service to the entire Commonwealth is quite unique. We have here at Accelecom, we are in business. We're on the east side of Louisville. We've got about 40 folks in Louisville across the Commonwealth working on the project. Several hundred years of experience. I was doing the math to see how much I contributed to that, hundreds of years of experience. But we've got a lot of folks who've got a lot of experience in telecom, a very deep bench. The expertise that we have on board comes not just from Kentucky, but really from across the nation. And our intent and the model that the team is familiar with and the team will deliver to our ultimate customers is a carrier grade model of super high availability and very excellent service. So that we understand how it works, we understand how to operate it. And again, based on the platform that we have to operate, we're highly confident it's going to be a great experience for folks once they're signed up. So we are closing the digital divide. Learning and teaching from home has never been more important. Telehealth, obviously, can't overstate the importance of that. I think we're seeing the nature of jobs and employment change. We're seeing different types of economic development that are all based on broadband connectivity. Businesses expanding their workforces, working remotely as a result of connectivity to broadband, and breaking down those barriers that cause people to be socially isolated, as is demonstrated on this call. So that is all to say, we are very excited to be part of the solution, and we are very excited to be at the beginning of the end of Kentucky's digital divide, and the end of the beginning, really, as we start to get into providing service to areas across the state. And if you have questions, there is a website which is on the screen there, KentuckyWired.ky.gov. Would encourage you to go out and take a look. And Dan, I think you are going to facilitate a question or two.
Yeah, a few questions, and I will maybe you guys can both expound on a couple of things. I guess first of all, if you could explain a little further the connection between what you guys are doing and the state of Kentucky, the Commonwealth, in terms of the government's role and what the connection and relationship is there.
I'm sorry, Dan, is that for David or I?
Well, either one, I suppose. Rob, maybe start with you if you want. Just what the relationship and the connection is with the state in this project.
Okay. Well, yeah, as I said in my presentation, this initiative was started by the state to help bridge that digital divide. We were hired under a partnership with the state to facilitate this project and bring in the expertise to get it constructed, which we have now done. The network is pretty much complete and in place now. And now it's the handoff over to David's group working with the Commonwealth to do the wholesale side of it on the private entity side, while at the same time, our phase on the construction goes from construction into operation and maintenance. We have that contract as well for the next 27 years. And we work with the Commonwealth to make sure that once we have this in place, it stays up and running with great reliability.
And Dan, just to be clear, the state is the service agent for state agencies, colleges and universities, the Department of Transportation, Department of Health, and Human Services, all those state agencies, all the non-state agencies. Accelecom will be the service provider to them, so that includes county governments, and as we talked about, healthcare, agriculture, local schools, etc. So the vision is that the state will serve state agencies and will serve others, local ISPs.
Great. Kate Caulfield is asking, how can we ensure that those who cannot afford access are able to get access?
Yeah, I think I'll take a swing at that. I mean, I think that's a great question and maybe the most important question. As I mentioned, there's a lot of money measured in the billions being identified by both the state and the significantly the federal government to provide access. I think that the Kentucky Wired Network solves an economic problem, and that is previously, traditional service providers, traditional networks, it was not economical to build out into some of these underserved areas. I think that Kentucky Wired allows the network and in fact has created a network that's extended into these underserved areas and makes it economical for ISPs, wireless ISPs, for example, to provide service where it was not able to be provided economically in the past. So that is to say that's an important question, but I think the first step in that journey is making sure that the cost of service comes down, and that's what Kentucky Wired will facilitate.
And another question for rural cable providers that offer broadband, will they be able to provide that last mile of service? Is that how this works?
So if there is a provider already in a rural community, we will offer and be able to provide them a faster connection back to the internet. If there's a rural community that doesn't have local access currently, we are going to facilitate their ability to connect to the internet, whether that's through a cable plant infrastructure or through a wireless infrastructure. So if it's there, it gets faster. If it's not there, it's easier to get there.
Right. Couple questions having to do with urban impact. What will potentially the impact be of this project for Louisville, or for that matter, Lexington, or urban areas like that?
Well, I think the urban areas, as I said earlier in our presentation, have internet, but not necessarily everyone has really high speed, good connection, very reliable all the time. With this network, it does provide that, and in some cases could increase their speeds 5 to 10-fold. So that has a huge impact. And imagine, all the video conferences that are going on, all the telecommunication, all the schoolwork, all that is putting such a burden on the systems. Having a robust network like this that takes you right to the data centers, to the World Wide Web at very high speed is a big benefit to all, not just rural areas.
Good. What is the funding plan now and in the future? Is this a contract, or what's the arrangement? Just if you could just talk a little more about the funding now and moving forward.
Okay, presently for Kentucky Wired, there were bonds issued to help pay for the construction of this project, which is now completing. So that's one thing. And then as there's a contract in place for the group that constructed it to then now transition to operating and maintaining it for those 27 years I talked about. And we have operational centers that can see the whole network and how well it's operating in all segments. And as soon as anything happens that reduces capacity, or if there's an outage due to a storm or anything, we are aware of it and dispatch our technicians to get it up and running right away. So that's a cost that we've partnered with the Commonwealth over the next 27 years that pays for that attention to the network to keep it robust.
Okay, which of the, Rich Harned wants to know, which of the two entities is responsible for network security?
Well, on our side, during the construction, the Commonwealth provided us access to the facilities we needed to get into. And of course, there was quite a few protocols to go through just to do that. And as part of our construction of the network and those areas where our equipment can be accessed, yes, there is a lot of security put in place, everything from fences to locks to security cameras, all those types of things you would normally expect.
I'd also say, Dan, both Rob's team and the network team that's supporting the Accelecom network, has got part of that state-of-the-art network is state-of-the-art virtual security provisions as well, in terms of making sure that beyond physical ingress that we are preventing any unwanted virtual ingress into the network. So that is another, it's a nice thing to not have to be building in those protections retroactively to be part of the network design out of the gate. So it is exciting to be at the tip of the spear.
Right. Fred Cowan was asking, there have been some news articles in the past concerning potential liability of the Commonwealth for certain expenses related to this project. What's the status of all of that right now? And the second part of his question has to do with how much revenue will the state receive from the project moving forward?
I'll address the first part of that. I mean, this is a 3,200-mile construction project. And as I stated in my presentation, it is extreme outside of the physical construction itself. It is an extremely complex contractual management project with not just between the partners that are building the project, but all the other third parties and stakeholders that we have to make agreements with to get across properties, get easements in place, get permits in place, get pole attachment agreements with all these utilities on their poles, and then design and move everybody to make room for ourselves. So there's a lot that comes with all that. And yes, there have been some issues that came up really in the early part of the project on how we address all that. We got hit with all of it at once, and we've gotten through those hurdles. And again, the project is coming to completion now. We're in the process of closeout now, and some issues that we're just trying to finalize between us and the Commonwealth, but nothing that we can't get through right now.
And to the second part of that question, Dan, on the revenue sharing, it's a sliding scale. The revenue sharing arrangement does allow some recovery of the capital investment that Accelecom is undertaking to get the customer set up. But once that capital investment is recovered, the Commonwealth shares in a very significant part of the revenue post-recovery. I don't have those projections out into the future, but it is a material number, and the revenue share is quite significant over time. So I think it will go a long way to relieve some of the costs of the network build.
Thanks, David. Bruce Engelhardt asked the question about satellite. Is satellite an option, or is that too slow, or what is the future of satellite when it comes to serving internet?
I'll take that, Rob. I mean, we don't really think about satellite in conjunction with this project. I think satellite connections sometimes are not great for the sort of high bandwidth, particularly upstream, that's required for communications like this one. I do want to emphasize, and you heard me say several times, the new fixed wireless technologies are very exciting. That the evolution of fixed wireless, there's a particular type of spectrum called CBRS. That spectrum is recently available. The technology has evolved greatly in the past 5 years, and that allows us to come to a water tower, say, to connect an antenna at the top of the water tower and serve, hundreds of houses around the water tower. So when we think about pushing this fat pipe out to rural areas, I think more in terms of that fixed wireless solution than I would about satellite.
All right, some good questions. Thank you, everybody. And President Julia, I will turn it back to you.
Well, thank you, Rob and David, for an informative program addressing a critical need for our city and our Commonwealth. And Dan, thanks for leading the discussion. Another shout out to Barbara for arranging the special music performed by Philip, and Fred and Napoleon for hosting the pre-meeting. Next week's pre-meeting will be hosted by Rotarian Denise Sears, CEO of Supplies Overseas, and our guest speaker will be Ben Chandler, President and CEO of Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky. Thank you all for being with us this week. Be well. We are adjourned.